We go. And we are live. Welcome to Relationship Alchemy Live. I am so excited to be having this conversation with Suzanne today. And I want to just start with, if you are here watching us live, drop a hashtag live in the comments, whichever platform you're on. We should be able to see it. So let us know if you're with us live. And if you're watching the replay, drop a hashtag replay, because we're going to come back and check out the comments and answer questions. And we love to connect with you even after this live broadcast is over. So let us know you're with us. And today we're going to be talking about feeling stuck, how to pivot and reinvent your life as a boss, like a boss. And we were chatting before the show began, and we each have been engaged in really profound pivots ourselves this year. So this conversation is both very personal to us, but also us bringing what we're learning about the process and what we've learned and why it's working well for each of us to you. So that's what's going down today. I'm going to read. Well, first of all, you may not know who I am. I'm Marie Elizabeth Molly. I'm the founder of the company Relationship Alchemy, and I have been a relationship coach for the past 8 years, and I'm pivoting into helping women who are near or in midlife to reconnect with their deepest passions and truths so that they can build the second half of their life in a truly aligned, authentic, passion-filled way that lights them up and prevents that kind of shrinking or disappearing that we can sometimes fall into as we get older. And I do this through coaching, private coaching, as well as my Passion Body Hub community, and also my Passion Body Activation retreats. So the method that I work with, that I've created, is called the Passion Body Activation Method, and that's what I do. And Suzanne Goldstein is a change maker, and she's on a mission to elevate humanity. She's the founder and CEO of Dare Human, which is a highly sought after business. She is a highly sought after business coach, consultant, and strategist. She's an industry disrupting social entrepreneur, filmmaker, author, and a creative visionary. No wonder we get along so well, because we're both so multi-passionate. Suzanne has built an expansive, purpose-driven portfolio career, finding creative ways to use storytelling, business, and technology to help humans build a fairer and more just world. She lives by the values people, planet, profit, in that order. I love that about you. Hi.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited we're having this conversation.
It's going to be a lot
I
of
just
fun.
adored you ever since we first met, and I'm
Same.
super thrilled that we're going to be chatting. So I'm opening the comment field. So anyone who joins us live, please drop a hashtag live. Let us know you're here. Any questions, comments that come through, please just drop them in and we'll respond. So the impetus for this conversation was really us realizing, wow, we've both been in these profound pivots recently, and let's bring what we're learning to folks. So, would you share first what you want, whatever you want to share about the pivot you're in,
Yeah.
and then I'll share a bit about mine, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, I think first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. Like when we met, it was like immediate kinship. So yay. And I can't wait for us to meet in person in October. That's going to be epic. Um, so before I go into what my current pivot is, I think it's important to say that I've been pivoting my whole life. So a lot of people think that you kind of pick a direction and you go for it the rest of your life. And I was once told by a friend, you pick a direction and you meander with purpose. And the whole reason of meandering with purpose is that sometimes you actually see something that resonates really deeply, or as you elevate, as you evolve, as you become a new version of yourself, that the direction of your life takes a new turn. And so we can get into this a little bit later, but one of the things I've done that's really been game changing for me is that I upgrade myself like software. And what I've noticed is sometimes the upgrades are like dot releases. Like they'll say you're updating your phone to like iOS, I don't know what number we're on, 16.6,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes I'm Suzanne 15.4, right? And then some little upgrade happens and I get to 15.5. But
Yeah.
what I've noticed is when I have a big upgrade, when there's something from the world and exposure to consciousness and the universe speaking that literally allows me a quantum leap to another level. So maybe from Suzanne 29.1 to Suzanne 30, a big
Yeah.
up level. When those big quantum leaps happen, it's almost written in the universe that I need to shift.
Yeah.
And so I kind of go with that feeling, and I'm very in tune with that. And I think it's such an important frame to set, because a lot of people think that pivots are failures. Oh, you couldn't do this,
Oh,
and so you went to that. And I just want to say for the record, pivots to me are like the most powerful, sexy, gorgeous, engaged, enlightened, cool things you can ever do. And it's not that you're leaving everything behind, it's that you're taking everything you have with you and deploying it in a new direction. And so I just wanted to say that as we start, because I don't want anybody here to feel like, oh my God, you're stuck and you have to pivot because you're never going to make it anywhere. I hope it's okay that I added that.
Well, I just so co-sign what you just said, because when you said people look at pivoting as a failure, I'm like, wow, that is so not even where I come from. It didn't even occur to me that that would be why we're pivoting. Because for me, pivoting, just like you said, it's that wandering with purpose. It's that constant. To me, it's more like when you're sailing and you're trying to go from here to there. You don't go straight at the destination. You the wind and the waves might be taking you a bit this way, and then you tack and go this way, and you tack and go this way, and by this tacking, you get to your destination. That's to me what pivots are.
I forgot we're both sailors, and
I'm actually not a sailor. I'm a diver, but I've been on enough sailboats where I've had the felt experience of what that feels like.
yeah, and
You're a
I just
sailor.
wrote a whole thing about tacking and
Oh my
pivoting.
God. Yeah.
So yay,
I
more
must have
alignment.
heard you. I must have heard you in the field, because it's not like an example I use all the time. But to me, pivoting is like that. How do you constantly make adjustments so that you are in alignment with the thing you're offering and creating, and so that the resonance can be clear? Because if you're not, of course, now I'm mixing metaphors. I'm stepping away from sailing and we're going to music. But the resonance, when we're not aligned with the thing we're doing anymore, there's a kind of dissonance that happens energetically in the field, which can affect sales, etc. But I don't see that part as failure. I see that as misalignment.
Yeah.
And then the pivot is, how do I come back to alignment again? So how does that land?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. When I started my career as a filmmaker, and I produced my first Hollywood movie at the age of 27. And I remember when I was 31, maybe, yeah, 30 or 31, I decided to leave the film business because this new thing called the web was coming out. And I was like, I want to use the internet and technologies of the web to flatten the world so that more people can get access to information. And that's the way I'm going to help elevate humanity. I had been at Disney. I wanted to make movies that were going to change hearts and minds. I ended up making a lot of family fare that I'm not that proud of. And so I decided to leave. And I remember having a going away party in Griffith Park in LA. And a bunch of friends came out and were kind of celebrating that I was leaving. And one came up to me and he's like, how can you leave the film business? Like, what do people do for work after they've been in the film business? And I was like, anything they want, because they know that shit done and they know, the whole thing. But so many people are so terrified of a pivot. They think that it's a failure. And so I was like, no, I've done what I wanted. I produced a movie when I'm a very young age, and now I'm ready for my next big challenge. And so I just love that as a frame for how we talk about pivoting.
I mean, thank you for bringing that frame, because it also comes to mind. I feel like there's a generational shift. Like my father's generation tended to pick one thing and stick with it throughout life. My father became a doctor. That's what he did, period. Punto final, done. And he actually cautioned me against my multi-passionate nature, because he saw me interested in a lot of different things, spirituality, healing, which I pursued professionally. I have a master's in Chinese medicine. I used to be a massage therapist. I mean, I've been in the healing and personal growth world for over 30 years, but how I offer that has changed. And so when he saw, and I'm also creative and musical and all of that, so he cautioned me against this multi-passionate interest, because to him, picking one thing and sticking with it was the way. And I just don't think that's true anymore. I think for our generation, because we're pretty close in age, I think for our generation, there is more permission to be multi-passionate, but there's the vestiges of shame, I think, around changing things up when we're no longer happy, because of perhaps what we internalized from our parents, at least what I internalized from my parents.
Well, I heard a lot of the same things. I was trained in both mechanical engineering and theater and film. And my
Wow.
parents desperately wanted me to be an engineer, because they're like, there's so few female engineers out there. You could go and you could crush it. You'll get any job you want. It'll be amazing. And I was like, no, I want to work in the arts. And they thought I was insane. And I went and I broke into the theater world in London. I worked at the National Theatre of Great Britain. It's a whole nother story for another day, but the short version of it is I basically sat on the couch in the lobby of the backstage area for 8 straight days until someone would talk to me. And I always say to people these days, please don't do this, you'll end up in jail. But in the 1980s, you could pull it off. I think in our generation, I'm Gen X, that it's still odd to people. Like, people go into finance, they stay in finance. They might move in finance, but they stay in finance. People like you and me, like, we're over here and then we're over here because we're guided by that internal compass. And I think it's very, very different. Where I look at the younger generations like Gen Z, and they can do anything they want. It's like they can wear anything they want. They can look any way they want. They're not upset about having, a muffin top. Like, our generation is like, oh, I've got 3 extra pounds. And now they're like accepting of all body types. Like, I wish I was born in Gen Z. I think it would be amazing.
Me too.
So I think
I want to shout out, they had more emotionally intelligent parents than we probably did. Like, each generation is getting, hopefully, I think we're backsliding a bit, but in general, each generation feels like it's getting more conscious and more emotionally intelligent, which, is trickling down to the kids. So anyway, back to permission.
Yeah. So I think that, for me, I spring clean 4 times a year. And I do it because I want to really look at my life and the things around me. And when I spring clean, I also mean people. And like, people that are really still aligned, and people that, maybe I'll spend less time with, or whatever it is. It's not a judgment thing. It's a where you're going thing. And along with spring cleaning my life 4 times a year, I really take a deep look at my business 4 times a year. And what happens when I do that, and when I go into silence, every summer I take some time off and I go into silence. And when I come out of silence, I've really received all the messages that I'm meant to receive about what's next and how I'm here to serve and what my purpose, how it can, align even more deeply. And so the pivot is a really exciting and scary thing to do, because like, I just shut down 6 programs I run. Yeah, it's called the Her Suite, and I may bring it back someday. We'll see. But I have a series of programs: Lead Her, Become Her, Ignite Her, Elevate Her, and Amplify Her. And it's for women entrepreneurs at different levels in their business. And it was amazing. And I loved doing it. And people grew and had massive results. And that was super exciting. And it's not aligned for me right now. And so I transitioned some people into other containers. I, concluded containers with some people, and I have new people who are now coming in because I've created empty space where people can actually flow in. And so I think the pivot is just this beautiful moment of shifting energy.
Yes.
And redirecting it. So I'm a geek. I love physics. I love quantum physics. But when you think about any kind of force, Newton's second law is F equals ma. Force equals mass times acceleration. And force has a vector. And we often say force is a bad thing, right? Oh, he was so forceful. But force can also be such a good thing, like be a force for good in the world.
Yes.
And so it's so important for people to figure out where their vector is going. And as we do that, like tacking in the boat, it's like, what direction is the vector of your force? So you can push force in a bad direction or a good direction. You could push force up against someone or to catch someone, right? We can use it in a lot of different ways. And so that's really how I think about pivoting. And for me, like I'm in the middle of one. It's like you're in the rotating door, right? And you see what's next and you're like, oh, can I catch it? And so when you're in the middle of the pivot, that's what it's like. And then when you land, it's like, oh, the rotating door just stopped.
Yes.
And I now see my new purview.
And there's a new direction to walk.
A new vector, a new direction.
Yeah. I want to come back to my brain loves to kind of construct steps for people, right? And so I want to come back to and welcome those of you, first of all, who are here live. Drop a comment, say hi. And if you have any questions, drop those in the comments. And if you have nuggets, like if there's something Suzanne says that really hits home or something I say, drop the word #nugget and then write the takeaway, because we love to know what your favorite nuggets are. So as I was listening to you just now, my brain started to kind of construct a step-by-step, right, for approaching a pivot. And what I heard as really the first step is an inner listening. So you go into silence for every summer. You spring clean 4 times a year. So there's a quarterly cleaning of your space, of your friends list, so to speak, of your like what you're doing in your business. So 4 times a year, you are tuning in. And in particular in the summer, allowing yourself space and silence. I think that's super key. And we sometimes forget when we're in the flow of what we're doing to actually take that time to spring clean, so to speak, or deep clean 4 times a year, however you want to put it. And so I want to just really highlight that as a really great first step, because this pivot began for me in a similar way, in that I've been doing relationship work for the past 8 years. I was really encouraged to niche there because I have a ton of experience with relationships and sexuality and the study of that and the coaching of that. So I niched there. And over the past several years, it has started to feel like an ill-fitting shoe. So it's a shoe that used to fit great. And then over time, I'm like, what I'm actually really about is a much deeper connection to the self and awakening of us as conscious people in the world living in alignment that includes relationship, but is so much more than that. It's so much deeper, because what happens to us in midlife as women is we can often hit this spot that the success we've been working toward no longer fits, or the relationship we've been in no longer fits. Like the life we've constructed just doesn't fit anymore. And then there's often this panic. Like, what do I do now? Do I just suck it up and keep going because this is what I've committed to? Or can I give myself permission to listen more deeply and actually tune into what might be more aligned, not move hastily to throwing things out? Like, you don't want to just throw out the relationship, throw out the job too fast, but you want to actually listen. And so I started listening to myself and realized, oh, there's this whole deeper work around activating what I call the passion body that wants to come through. And I've spent the last 8 months downloading and organizing this new body of work. And but that came out of a deep inner listening, like, and the permission to be in the question of what needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love this. And I just want to say for people who are catching this, it's that you don't have to give up what you're doing to be in a pivot.
Exactly.
You can be, still serving clients or still serving cocktails, whatever it is you do.
Yeah.
That this is an inner work that happens when we, as you said, go into listening. And for people who are light workers, who know that they're put out here on the planet for something, for a purpose, our purpose grows as we grow. We're constantly being given tests by the universe to prove it, that we're here to do this work and we mean it.
Yes.
And so even when you get affronted with something, it's like, what is the lesson in this that I'm supposed to see and learn?
Yeah.
So that I can continue to whatever next version of me is supposed to come forward, and look at this as like an eternal journey. Just like you said, it's the sailing across the never-ending sea. Yeah. And you're constantly tacking and pivoting and tacking and pivoting. Yeah. And if you truly believe that you're a spiritual being having a human experience, which I do.
Yeah.
And that, as one of my spiritual gurus, Michael Bernard Beckwith, from Bay International Spiritual Center, says, that this human existence is a parenthesis in time. We're a spiritual being. We come and we're going along life, and boom, you incarnate into human form in these parentheses. You live this human life, and as soon as this human life passes, you're back into your spiritual being. And during these parentheses, we're supposed to be doing something here.
Yeah.
And so the more you grow and the more you evolve and the more you up level or upgrade your software like I do, the more you become authentically you.
Yes.
And so
I love that. And we share that. I studied with Reverend Michael for years and even sang in the Agape choir for a while. So,
you did?
Yeah. So another point of connection between us that we did not know before this conversation, which is amazing. So what would you say? I love everything you just said and wholeheartedly agree that there's this up leveling and vibrational shift. Like I'm really feeling it as I step into this new work that, again, includes but transcends relationship work. I've studied Ken Wilber's work way back. And so there's also this idea of transcend and include, that it doesn't have to be a rejection of where we've come from. It's really an assimilation of everything until this point that is now outflowing as this new work, which really feels like the thing I'm meant to bring to the planet. Not to put pressure on myself or the work, but it does feel like it, right? And that it could change. I would be okay with that. But this feels like it for now.
Exactly. And I love that you quoted Ken Wilber, because his work, and unfortunately I'm forgetting the name of the person who originated the concept, was spiral dynamics.
Yes.
Which is such a powerful way of thinking, is that you're spiraling upward, just like the psychic vortex.
Yes.
And there are different colors that are associated with different levels of consciousness. And when you get to like the turquoise consciousness, which I think you and I spend a lot of time in, you're really here serving humanity.
Right.
And I call it giving myself an egoectomy, because I got to give myself an egoectomy every single day. When something's hard or someone, annoyed me, it's like, how do I not give into my humanness and instead continue up that spiral? So I love that you quoted Ken Wilber. He's a brilliant human being.
Such a brilliant thinker.
Sorry?
Yeah. Such a brilliant thinker.
Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right. And when we allow ourselves to be in the world of pivoting, the concept of being stuck goes away.
Yeah. Say more about that.
You can't pivot and be stuck at the same time, right? You're either moving or you're not. And I like to say that the only the only perfection in life. People don't move a lot because they don't feel like they have it perfected. And I'm a big fan, maybe because I came out of the software world of build it, try it, fix it, try it again. And
Iteration.
exactly. And so this ability that we have to, instead of calling it getting stuck, that you're getting a message of resistance because this is not the direction you're supposed to go anymore.
Oh man, can we riff on that for a bit? Because this is so key. I want to repeat what you said. You're experiencing resistance. Let me make sure I heard it right. You're experiencing resistance because it's not necessarily the direction to keep going in. Is that, did I paraphrase that correctly?
Yeah, I think it's, if you think of yourself, gosh, what's a good analogy? So I was a ballroom dancer, so let me use that as an example. So in ballroom dance, there's a masculine energy, usually the lead, and often played by a man, who holds the frame of the dance.
Yeah.
And when you are a follower in that, you get to hold the feminine energy.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it, for those of us who are kind of like big thinkers and think a little too much, and it really changed me to learn how to ballroom dance, I had to give over my control to someone else who could tap my hand in a way, and I would know that that person wanted me to do a spin. Where they could lead my arm in a certain direction, and I knew I was supposed to go over here. Right? So when we find resistance in the dance, it pushes us in a different direction.
Yeah.
If I'm spinning in the dance because my lead gave me the opportunity to spin, when he puts his hand on my shoulder and stops me, he's like, you're not supposed to be spinning anymore. So if we translate that into life path, when we feel that resistance inside of us, it's the universe saying, I'm stopping what you're currently doing, and I'm going to lead you in another direction.
Exactly. And I love that you brought the word control in, because I think when we excessively try to control, like if we're a follower who is trying to lead, that creates suffering, first of all, and it mucks up the dance, like the dance gets messy.
Yep.
However, it's also, that to me is what leads to the experience of stuckness, right? It's like if we're not receptive, so I talk a lot in my work about being a gracious receiver. And what that means to me is when life is offering you feedback, whether that's feedback in the form of like, yes, green light, shoo, go, or whether that's feedback in the form of like, not quite, not yet, nope. That we be receptive to that and adjust and constantly be paying attention to those internal and external cues that show us the direction of the tacking that we want to be doing. And I think a lot of us, for many of us, especially if we've grown up with this idea that's supposed to look a certain way, it's hard to have that level of fluidity and willingness to adjust, like you and I are inviting people into.
Yeah, and I honestly, I couldn't do it any other way.
Me too. I mean,
but
I'm not going to say I don't kick my heels sometimes, like, man, why isn't this working? I can't say I never do that. Like, that happens. And then I remember, oh, right.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've studied lots of systems, the Enneagram, et cetera, and there's a martyr part of me that used to live inside of me, and it was I'm weird and independent, and I make my own decisions, and I live my own way because I have to. But every once in a while, I would get to the place was like, why can't I be satisfied with a white picket fence and 2.2 children and a dog and a half? Like, why can't I be one of those people? It'd be so much easier than constantly being an entrepreneur, what I do, and rebranding and if I tell you how many, like, this is old fashioned, but how many business cards I have had over the decades. 35 years of work, I've probably had 32 business cards. You know what I mean? It's like,
I stopped buying them in big quantities because I change them so often. I'm constantly tossing out cards. So I buy really small quantities at a time now.
exactly. And I've even stopped buying them because I'm like, let me just give you my Instagram.
Yeah, and I found this new digital thing that's super cool that sends your contact info. And anyway, so if someone were, so coming back to step one of pivoting, being this deep listening and this willingness to respond to what is coming up. I mean, both what's being revealed from the outside, but also what's being revealed from the inside, from the listening. What would be the next? Because both of us are not saying you immediately have to change your life. Like the outside change to me is like step, I don't know, 10 or 20, right? There's so many things that happen before you actually do the thing that's visible to anybody else.
Yeah.
For you, what would you say is after the listening, when you get the messages, you get the download, you realize, oh shit, the her suite no longer fits. I need to go in this new direction. Or for me, like the relationship coaching no longer fits. I need to go in this passion body direction. What's the next step that someone could follow?
This is going to sound funny, but it's trusting that in the unknown, the answers will come.
Amen. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
getting comfortable
Is
with
that
being
like not grasping too quickly for certainty in a certain way, but letting it be
yeah,
unknown?
I think so. I think it's really about knowing that Rome wasn't built in a day.
Mm.
And so, like when I was saying about the revolving door earlier, it's like sometimes the door slows down and it's kind of here, but it's not fully in front of you yet. And so we've got to wait for the revolution
Yeah.
of the revolving door to land. And
Mm-hmm.
so my pivot started in probably March of this year, and I was still running all my programs and doing all my things. And then I went into silence for, some time in August. And at that time, boom, the revolving door landed and I saw the new direction. And then, so if part two is waiting for the revolution and for the pivot to land and being patient in that uncomfortable period,
Yeah.
there's depending on your life, there's a moment in time when the door's landed and you know where you're going, that you're going to have to do some really beautiful and serving of the people around you, undoing of certain things so that you can rebuild other things. And there has to be a willingness. Like I closed some containers that was a lot of revenue for me.
Wow.
Right. But
Yeah.
I know what I need to do.
Yep.
And I always say that patience is my favorite business strategy.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm going to write that down and hang on. Patience is my favorite.
Business strategy.
Yeah.
And so if I sit in my patience as I wait for the revolving door to find me, and also as I'm dismantling things that need to be dismantled, having beautiful conversations with, in my case, clients about this is what I'm thinking. Thank you. This is what I'm thinking, and I'd love to, continue the journey with you. Does this resonate with you? Does it not? And before I even am opening any containers to anyone publicly, I'm
Yeah.
taking care of the people with me first and foremost, because as you said, I put people and then planet.
People, planet, profits. Yeah.
Right. So I got to go.
That's so key, to hold the people that are already in your space. You don't just drop them, right? And you can invite them into the new thing. Some of them are going to want to come with you and some of them won't. And that's okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what I heard from you for step two, just to anchor it for people. So step one, in case you're tuning in late, which is totally fine. Glad you're here. The step one is really that inner listening of recognizing, oh, it's time to tack a bit my direction. I'm no longer going quite in the direction that feels aligned. and let me listen, let me get a sense of what's coming next, right? What feels aligned for me. And this can be a slow process. You started in March when you're still delivering your old containers. I started around the same time, maybe around January actually, and I was still delivering all my work and it's only now that I'm really launching it, right? So it's been about 9 months that I've been in this pivot, even as I've still been putting out the Relationship Alchemy podcast, which I'm actually sunsetting at the end of October. But I've still been putting that content out because this pivot has been happening, behind the scenes. So then step 2 is using this revolving door image where you can see things going by, but where the doorway doesn't land to the open space yet to actually walk through it, that there's a time period of patience and I know for me this year, I really had to be patient because I recorded this private podcast that I'm releasing next week. And it was recorded probably in May or June. And here we are, I was so frustrated because there were some tech things and it's just taken so long for it to be the right time to release it. And wouldn't you know it, in August, I downloaded the last piece of my framework.
Oh, wow.
Had I released the podcast quickly after I recorded it, it wouldn't have had this final necessary piece in it. So what's happening on the surface is frustration with technology and people, and why isn't it moving faster? But what's happening underneath is this incredible sense of divine timing, because then in August, I downloaded the last piece, which actually had me re-record one of the episodes to have this piece in it, and it makes the podcast complete now. And now it's actually the right time. So there's a level of patience and trust when you're in the revolving door and you haven't hit the open door yet to go through. I think we need.
And I just want to point out something you said that's so powerful. So we often see these things as the technology's not working, the person's not working, the thing's not working, I can't get it out, blah, 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 blah. We often see those in the moment as a human right in front of our face, and we're like, gosh, if I could, right? And instead, what if you realize that these are exactly the moments of resistance you need? The universe didn't let the technology work because it knew you hadn't downloaded the piece. The people weren't showing up the way they were supposed to show up because you hadn't downloaded the piece yet. So all of that stuff that feels like chaos in human form is actually the divine guiding us. It's like these little guardrails. Like when you take little kids bowling and you put the bumpers down. And so they can't throw the ball across all the alleys. It's like the universe put some bumpers down, and we're just like using the bumpers to get where it's intending us to go. And this is where the idea of my God, I just forgot the word. Hold on one sec. It's where fate and free will intersect.
Yes.
So the fate is the universe giving us the guide rails. Free will is us deciding where we want to go and saying, hey, I'm going
to graciously receive or not? Are we going to participate in our own evolution?
Exactly.
Choice about that, Yeah.
Exactly. Love it.
I love that. Thank you. So then step 3, when the doorway, it feels like, tell me if this is accurate, it feels like step 3 begins really when the doorway, boom, suddenly aligns with the door to walk through it. Then what do we do?
Yeah, so that's when I was talking about gracefully kind of taking care of your people. If you have people, right?
Yep.
So it's like focusing on them first, not you first.
Yes.
I had made the pivot all about me. I would have been like, okay, I don't want to do these containers anymore. I'm just going to close them. and just tell everybody your time is up. I won't charge you anymore. And da da da. Da. Well, I'm not then delivering on the promise that I had given them. And I'm making it about me, but our transformation when we're in the industries where we serve other humans, we've got to put other humans first.
Yes.
And so it's taking care of the other humans, knowing in that again, that now that the door is locked, like the vision is starting to percolate, right? All the things, all the pieces are coming together and they're ready to be launched or shown to the world or whatever that is. But if we focus on that without focusing on our people, we're actually hurting ourselves and our people. And I don't believe in either.
And we're out of integrity. Like, that's what I'm hearing soaking through every word you're saying is just such a depth of integrity and truth of service, like real service versus kind of lip service. And, we see a lot in the industry. And self-service. Like, oh, I'm here to serve people, but I'm really here to stroke my own ego and be famous. Like, there's a lot of that, right? So anyway, so great. So step 3, continue serving and completing and honoring the contracts you're currently in, even as you're developing the new direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so then step 4, what do you feel step 4 would be? Would be when you, because at some point you're creating the IP for the new thing, you're setting up the systems for the new thing, you're creating the marketing for the new thing. Like, there's all this stuff happening behind the scenes, even as you're doing step 4 of continuing to honor the people who are already in your space.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you work for someone else, you're continuing to honor the confines of your current job, even as you develop the new thing behind the scenes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then step 5, I think, is where we at.
I think we're at 4.
Let's see. Yes.
Listen.
Door 3. Yeah, 4. Okay. So I think we're at 4, right? Because 3 is you hit the thing, but now you're honoring the people. Yes. And developing the things behind the scenes. So step 4, is that the unveiling?
I think so.
I mean, so.
You're in the middle of it. I'm about to be in the middle of it. I have so much going on behind the scenes that it's kind of like that iceberg analogy, right? It's like what people see of me right now is this big, and what's happening underneath the surface is like this. And it's about lifting the iceberg, right?
I feel the same way. And yeah, because next week is a big unveiling for me.
I'm so excited.
And then the 25th to the 29th, I'm actually holding a party where for the release of this private podcast, the Passion Body Passage podcast. It's a very plosive title, Passage. Anyway, so I'm going to do a Facebook party for this podcast where I'll release an episode each day and we can chat in the, group about it. And there'll be prizes and all sorts of fun things. And so all of that is happening the 25th to the 29th of this month. And so there's really this unveiling that has already begun, but is going to go into higher gear next week. And so it's such a potent time when you begin to share the thing you've been working on and pivoting toward for you and I a long time, for months.
Yeah, and I think a huge part of step 4, if we're going to make it these steps, is holding the energy of all it can be as if it's already happened. And so many of us, we look at, like I said earlier, we look at every setback as a setback. And I like to say, you got to take off your victim glasses and put on your victor glasses. And it's like, how do I start looking at the world, even if there's no evidence that I am the victor?
Yes.
That this thing is working, even if it hasn't even started. This thing has worked, even though it hasn't launched yet. That we actually live in that energetic vibration because people want an outcome when they work with us.
Right.
And if I just say to you, here's what I'm doing, do you want to come along? That's very different than here's who you can be, the transformation that's available to you should you choose yourself.
Yes. Key orientation. So much, I mean, first of all, it's so much more effective but it's also, again, if we are to be true as service providers and in integrity, that is the focus.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that said, some of us can tend to slide into overgiving or people pleasing or only thinking of our clients at our own expense. And I don't think that's what either of us are suggesting is the way. That there's a beautiful dance between what serves our people and being focused on their results and their transformation, and also us taking care of our own alignment and having boundaries and not answering client calls on the weekend or whatever it is, like having the kind of attention on our own well-being that allows us to show up and be full of energy, of clarity, of power to serve more effectively. It's a both and.
Yeah, for sure. And, learning energetic boundaries and learning to protect our energy and learning to hold a frequency, which is one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur. I always say that entrepreneurship is the biggest personal growth game you'll ever play. It doesn't matter if you're online or offline. It's such a huge growth game because every time, in the case of doing online stuff, every time the algorithm changes, every time the economy changes, every time inflation changes, every time, during the pandemic, everybody hung out a shingle and said, I'm a coach.
Right.
I've been coaching for 35 years. So how do I differentiate myself from the other people who just like hung up a shingle, went and took a weekend coaching certification?
Right.
And it's like, okay, how do I distinguish myself? So it is holding the vibration of what you're capable of and not letting it dip every time you feel challenged.
That's so key. I mean, and that feels like the overarching, that's not even a step. That's just kind of the floor on which all these steps we're talking about rest.
Land.
Yeah. It, really learning to hold your energy effectively. And one of my previous mentors is bringing to mind something she used to say, which I'm going to paraphrase. Her name is Marisa Murgatroyd, amazing entrepreneur. And she talks a lot about to hold more if you're wanting to expand your business or to expand your speaking or to expand your visibility, whatever it is, you have to create the energetic container that can hold more. So if you're functioning, this is me talking now, this is not Marisa's words. If you're functioning with a leaky bucket, like if your energetic container has holes in it because you're trying to source your self-worth from your business or get your daddy's attention that you never got, and you're trying to get your daddy's attention by being successful or whatever it is, if any of that stuff, that's like holes in your energy bucket. So if those are present, it doesn't fill. And you're constantly going to be grasping to try to fill those energetic holes. So the work really needs to be to strengthen your own energetic container. And there's many ways to do that. One of the ways that I love is actually practicing Qigong. It directly strengthens my field. But then there's also mindset work and there's meditation. There's all the many, many tools that help us strengthen our energetic container. But that part to me is so key. It's like the foundation on which everything we're talking about has to rest.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say, and I can't speak for you, Marie Elizabeth, because I've only met you in the recent months.
Yeah.
For me, I was not always this person. So when I say that I literally upgrade myself like software, I will tell you that Suzanne 1.0 was a mess. A full-on cyclone of a mess. I had tried to commit suicide. I was broken in so many ways that I didn't even know I was broken. So I couldn't figure out why I wanted to end my life. I was just like so in the darkness. And the reason I say that entrepreneurship is the biggest personal growth game you'll always ever go through is because to get people to decide that we're the one that they want to invest in, that they believe that we can help with their transformation, we need to heal our wounding so we can share our stories and show people where we've been and where we are now.
Yeah.
Because that transformation is so important to people understanding what's possible for them. Otherwise, they look at us in this conversation right now and they're like, oh, well, you guys have it easy. You guys have it all figured out. So of course it's easy for you. And I just want to be the one that raises my hand here. This was not easy.
Yeah.
I struggled way longer than I should have or could have. I did not know how to get out of my own way. I actually made a second attempt at my life much later. And, the universe didn't want me to die.
And here you are. Exactly.
Exactly. So I just
I want to co-sign that too, because I never, especially as a teacher and a coach, I'm never coming from the position that I have all my shit together. Like that is just not. And if that's what's coming through this conversation, please be clear that that's not the case for either of us. Like we're not speaking from this like guru position. It's really from a in the trenches, been there, done that, tried all the things kind of position. And for me, I had to get really, really sick. I was in a marriage that was basically good. Like I was married to a great guy, but I just was fundamentally not happy. And I thought I was something wrong with me, that I just was incapable of being happy in a healthy, committed, long-term relationship. And so I was just getting physically ill, worse and worse and worse. And eventually I had this, and we were doing couples therapy, we were working on the thing, but I eventually had this realization that, oh, it's not that I'm broken, it's that I'm deeply unhappy in this relationship. And I had to confront that. And we kept working on it for a while, but eventually I initiated a divorce. And from there, so much changed. Like my health began to return because I had finally listened to myself. My health began to return. He met and married the woman who is still his wife over a decade later. They have 2 beautiful children. Like she's the right one. I met a few years later, I met the love of my life, and we just got married a couple months ago after being together like 8 years. But and I ended up being motivated by that perceived failure of my marriage, being motivated to go deeply into the study of what makes us tick, and in relationships, and studying relationships and sexuality for 2 years, and shifting my entire business in that new direction. That was a pivot that I made 12 years ago, or not, maybe it's 10 years ago. That's the pivot I made 10 years ago, was to shift in this relationship direction, which was right at the time, because that was the healing and the realization that I had to go through, that I could then offer from a very compassionate place, because I had to get really, really sick to finally listen. To then, here I am a decade later in a moving in a new direction. But so I just thank you for bringing that point in, because we're speaking from the work we've been doing for a long time, and somebody over here's in the muck. Just know that we both have been in the muck. And
so mucky.
so mucky, so messy. And but it's that listening, that willingness to listen, that willingness to allow things to change, that willingness to receive the messages we're getting from inside and the universe and life itself, and being willing to pay attention, allow the revolving door, like we've been talking about, to move and show us new things until it finally opens and we're ready to walk through the door. So that, and then here we are in this place of actually unveiling a new thing.
Exciting.
I'd love to, is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up? I've just so loved this conversation. I'm so excited for people to catch a replay. I'm going to be sending it out to my list. I'm going to get you a link for how to do that too. And yeah, is there anything you'd like to say to kind of bring this home?
Yeah, I think that I'm just going to say something I said earlier because I think it's worth kind of like the double statement, which is that the only perfection in life is progress.
Yes.
If we keep not moving because we're waiting for the answer to be perfect, to show up perfectly. And this can be in relationships. You're looking for the perfect man. You're looking for the perfect next job. You're looking for the perfect post to write. This isn't how we play with the universe, right?
Yeah.
We play with the universe in a messier way.
Yeah.
And the universe is a reflection of who we're being. So if we try to put on a mask
Yeah.
and show up in a perfect way, somehow the real you is going to be shown.
Yeah.
Because you're not being authentic. And so I would rather see messy action
100%.
than no action because of trying to be perfect. And that's the one thing that I think a lot of women struggle with is I don't want to move because what if I get it wrong?
Yeah.
And so I get the question a lot, what's the right next move? And the answer is I have no idea what your right next move is. The only thing I can say is the right next thing to do is move.
I love that. And it's the action that actually shows us where to tack next. Like we can't, I mean, because perfectionism has been my lifelong thing to work with, my my challenge and gift to work with. And what I've learned is that we can't work it all out in our heads before we act. We can't figure out all the variables. We can't, I have one of these brains that tries to think through every possible variable that could occur so that I'm prepared somehow for it or whatever as a stay against loss or wrongness or imperfection. And I've learned I just have to take an action, and then the action will actually reveal to me where to go next, like whether I go in the same direction because that worked, and so let me keep going, or like, oh, that wasn't quite it. Let me tack a little over here and see if that's it. And learning to adopt a more iterative approach where the action is actually revealing the next step has been huge for me to be able to keep moving. Otherwise, I would still be over here without a business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you for bringing that. I think that's just gorgeous. So thank you so much for being here today. And I can't wait to see you in October. Again, this has been Suzanne and I have been talking about if you're feeling stuck, how to pivot and reinvent your life as a boss. And let me drop, well, Suzanne's got her social right there. She follows Suzanne. You can find her. And if you want to find me on Instagram, as well as LinkedIn and Facebook, you can go to Relationship Alchemy MEM is where you can find me on social. And so go ahead and follow us both and stay connected. We both have amazing shit that's coming out soon, so stay tuned. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for holding space. I really appreciate it.